Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, Episode 4.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to bringing you useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to take your game to new heights. Today, it is my great pleasure to bring you an interview I did with Tom Wishon of Tom Wishon Golf Technology, talking about his 40-plus year career in golf club design, custom club fitting, and educating golfers on the value of custom fitting. As I was listening to Tom talk during this interview, I just kept smiling. So, let's get to it. Hello, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast. Today, it's a real pleasure to get to speak with Tom Wishon from Tom Wishon Golf, who's had a 35-plus year passion for helping golfers to play their best golf and also to help professional club fitters to help those golfers. He's an expert in golf club design, club performance, and club fitting, but I would also say he's an expert in being able to talk about these things to golfers and club fitters in a way that's understandable and enjoyable. So, Tom, thanks for doing this with me today.
Tony, thanks for the invitation. I'm always happy to be able to share anything I know and in all the many years that I've been digging into why golf clubs work for some people and don't for others.
Well, let's kind of dig into it here. But I'm always interested in how people got into doing what they do. So, I'll kind of turn it over to you and, tell us a little bit about your story. It could be, you could talk forever, I think, about 35 years of things, but, talk about how you've gotten, you still have a passion for what you're doing. And that's fun. So go ahead.
Yeah, the 35 years is now approaching 42. I hate to admit.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I'm 63 years old now. I graduated from college in 1972, and I had such passion for the game, that I wanted to work in golf. And so, for me, back in '72, when I moved to Northern California, I got a job at a golf course as an assistant pro. I joined the PGA of America's apprentice program back then, turned pro, and was headed to, looking at, going through the whole PGA process to eventually become a club pro. Well, during the time that I was first working as an assistant, I was making the princely salary of $300 a month and not making a whole lot in terms of lessons because the head pro was doing most of the teaching at the time, and so I needed something to supplement my income. Now, I always noticed that once a week there was a guy who would stop in from a club repair company in San Francisco, California, called Magel's Golf Club Service, still remember it, and he would pick up the clubs we had for repair and he'd drop off whatever was, we had given him the week before. And I'd always been really good with my hands and all that stuff, so I said, hey, I can do this. And so, long story short, over the next year I got the initial equipment and, self-taught myself, how to do reshafts and regrips and, refit the face insert in persimmon woods and, and all the stuff that was related to club repair. And that really kicked it off, being able to do this. Obviously the next thing was, when I would change a shaft or I would change a swing wood or I'd change a length or something like that, and sometimes it worked for the golfer and he'd hit the club better, and other times it didn't, and I would start to go, why is that?
Yeah.
And so that began my real interest in trying to find this stuff out. And in those days, what did I do? Well, I called the golf equipment companies or I called the shaft companies and asked my questions. And after about the 19th time of trying to do this and not getting an answer to my question, I got a little frustrated. And so I remember, slamming the phone down after, being given an answer of, well, that's proprietary information. We can't share that with you. I just slammed the phone down and said a few cuss words, and at that point said, I'm going to go find this stuff out, and when I find it out, I'm going to share whatever I learn with anybody who's interested in knowing.
Wow.
With that. So,
Yeah.
That kicked off a real passion for me in golf equipment. I soon realized that I was much more interested in anything related to golf clubs than I was in being a head pro. So, at that point, I decided to pursue that side of the golf business, with that. But I had gotten my PGA card, and I had a pretty good amount of swing teaching, experience and all that. But, so my first job that I got was in the golf equipment industry was in 1980. Was hired as the number 2 guy at the Golf Works in Newark, Ohio by Ralph Maltby. And
Yeah.
he had been kind of the first person in club repair to start to try to dig into this business, from a technical standpoint to try to find answers out. So I worked for Ralph from 1980 to 86, and then in 86 I got the opportunity to jump over and take over being president of what then was a small company called Dynacraft Golf Products, also in Newark, Ohio. And they were different than Golfworks. They were heavily involved in the business of selling club heads along with the shafts and grips to all the club repairmen. Back in that time, guys who were doing club repair, began to ask for heads, for, their supply companies to provide club heads for them. And there really weren't any of back in the 80s, there really weren't any of the club repair supply companies that offered heads. But Dynacraft had gotten involved in that, primarily because they were half owned by one of the largest club head production foundries over in Taiwan. And this gets into, this was a company called Dynamic Precision Casting, who are still one of the 4 largest club head production factories in the golf industry today. With that. So that allowed me to get a lot of opportunity to travel over to the foundry and spend weeks and months, as the time went on, learning everything about how club heads were designed, how they were produced and manufactured, and that really kicked off my desire to be a club head designer. Here again, there's no place you can go to learn that, other than just to see how a foundry manufactures club heads and all that. So I kind of had to self-teach myself in terms of how I was going to do that, and it worked out, very well, from that standpoint.
Yeah.
What helped the most was the fact that in working for a company that was in the component club making industry, we regularly had to have a catalog with at least 15 or 18 different models of wood heads, iron heads, wedge heads, putter heads, you name it. And so unlike the big companies who would generally bring out 1 or 2 new models a year, I always had to create anywhere from 4 to 8 or 9 brand new models in each different area of driver heads, fairway woods, iron heads, etc. So just pretty much by the sheer fact that I had to create a quantity of different club head designs, that right there was one of the biggest things that helped me to really cut my teeth and gain a huge amount of experience very quickly in how to design club heads.
Yeah, so some of them were great and some of them weren't as great, but that's part of the whole process, isn't it? Of being able to be good at something is to go through that, right?
Oh, absolutely. At this point, I try to forget all of the barking dogs that I created in my very, very early years of club head design, but that's how you learn.
Yeah.
And that also triggered the part where I had to do testing to determine the differences between one club head model and another, and that started to open the door towards doing a whole lot more research in all these areas that are related to how golf clubs work for different golfers. So I had gone from Dynacraft, we were able to grow that from almost nothing to a pretty good-sized company, in 8 years, and then I got an offer to be head of the component division at Golfsmith International in Austin, and at that time, Golfsmith was the largest of all of the component supply companies, so that just accelerated the process of having to do more models, more design work, more research, more research work, and at that time, then, I began to write. This was one of the things where the club makers would ask, well, why don't you do a book, or why don't you do articles, why don't you do whatever you can to teach us what you know, with that. And so, I began to write, and, the first books I did, at Dynacraft, I did one in, The Modern Guide to Golf Club Making, which both showed the club making assembly procedures, but it also began to explain some of the aspects of design and the design elements of clubs and what they did if they, to ball flight if you changed one thing or the other. But I also had a really strong passion to try to learn about the shaft. The golf shaft was really something that nobody, was saying anything about, and yet here were all these companies making different kinds of shafts, different kinds of golfers, and there was really no good empirical information to try and tell you how one shaft really differed and compared from another shaft out there. So 1990, 1991, I got some really good help from what then was the old Apollo Shaft Company of England. They had just created a whole, slew of brand new and at that time very sophisticated shaft testing and measurement equipment. And so they opened the doors, to me. They said, you do whatever you want to do, and just, tell us what you learn. And so that began a giant project of acquiring all sorts of different shafts from all sorts of different shaft companies, doing all sorts of empirical measurements on them so that we could start to compare things, and be able to say, well, this is why the dynamic shaft is different from the ProFit shaft or, whatever the different models were back in those days. And that began, a side thing where I had always been really, fascinated by the club head design, but then, joined that with going to work in shaft research and shaft design as well. Those two things, you put those together, you've almost got the whole golf club.
Yeah.
And, and then that triggered a real passion to go out and try and figure out what is it about fitting? Why exactly is it that this golf club works better for this golfer, but when I give the same golf club to another golfer, he hates it. He can't hit it as well. And that was where it was really helpful that I had a really good background from my years in the PGA as a teacher, because I had a pretty good background, in swing mechanics, swing characteristics. But now it was a matter of trying to work on being able to look at different swing characteristics of golfers and ask the questions, what is this swing actually doing to this golf club that this other swing is not? That could be explaining why this club works for this guy and not for that one. And so that's been an ongoing thing. Let me put it this way. I haven't done this solo. I've had a lot of good help along the years in the areas, where I really wasn't academically qualified to really know what was going on. I went and asked people, with the right engineering degrees, hey, guide me here. What's going on here? And, in particular, I had a really good mentor in that area, that helped me for a good 10 years or more, to get my thoughts and to get my scientific approach to this on the right track, to be able to do the right kind of testing and the right kind of research so that the conclusions that were made were valid, based on all of the testing work that was done. So it's just been an ongoing thing for me all these years, to just keep designing different club heads, trying different things, coming up with new ideas, all these things in terms of the differences in the club head designs. They all started with the same thing, where I kind of sit down and go, what if we did this?
Yeah.
And, I had the resources to be able to go to the different kinds of club head production factories, and get them to build prototypes, and, from that, the testing work done, and, and off it went, from there. I'd say probably one of the things that I am most proud of, that's been the most fun, is that over all these years in club head and shaft design, I've been able to come up with a whole lot of things. The firsts, I call them design firsts,
Yeah.
that I was able to think up and create and do well before the giant companies did, with that. So we're talking about things like, I actually had it was kind of fun. I did the very first titanium driver head of any U.S. company back in 1993, and that I did with the assistance of a foundry in Moscow, Russia, because none of the existing club head production factories at the time had the capability to manufacture titanium club heads. They didn't know how to handle the metal, at that time. Was also able to, go on and do a number of things. In 1995, actually, I was able to do the first adjustable hosel set of woods that works on the same principle of all these ones that are out there today.
Yeah.
Where you rotate the little hosel sleeve, changes the position in the shaft to change some of the specs in the head. I was able to do that in 95. We did the first metal with graphite driver head, where it was part metal, part graphite,
Yeah.
and a hollow shell. That was done in 1995, a long time before the rest of the industry did it, and on and on. We're quite a number of these things, and that's been fun, to be able to do that. So, yeah, add it all up, and boom, you blink your eyes, time goes by, you can't believe how fast it went by, and I'm 63 now.
And you're 63, yeah. Yeah, but, it's easy. It just comes out that you still have a passion for what you're doing, and that's, that just makes life fun, right?
Yeah, quite a bit. I think, more lately here, my work has focused more on trying to educate golfers
Yeah.
About the importance of being custom fit, because the golf equipment industry, they evolved a particular business model for how they would make and sell their golf clubs. Let's go way back in time, back into the 1800s, where, as the game grew over in what is now the United Kingdom, as golf grew, you had a situation where golfers needed golf clubs. Okay, well, at that time, if you were a golfer in the mid to late 1800s and you wanted to play the game, you had to go to a custom club maker, an individual who was, self-trained to be able to make golf clubs from scratch, that then you bought, to go out and play the game. Well, as the game kept growing, more golf courses were built. The golf courses needed people who would teach the game to new golfers, and so you had the concept of club professionals, that evolved through the 1800s. Well, the club pros were always asked by their golfers, to sell them golf clubs, so the club pros went to the individual club makers and said, hey, can you make golf clubs that you can sell to me and I can put them in my pro shop and then I can sell to the golfers? Okay, well, how were they going to do that? They had to be able to build golf clubs to a series of average or standard specifications,
Yeah.
so that they could pre-build these golf clubs to be sent to the various golf courses, so they were, in essence, sold off the rack to the different golfers. And that began well over 100 years ago, the business model of the golf equipment industry that still exists today, where all these big, giant golf companies go out and they develop their technology for what they're going to design in the club head, and then they have to decide, well, we have to pre-build these so that they can be shipped to all these golf stores and pro shops, so we have to pick an average length, an average loss, average lie angles, average shaft flexes, all these things that make up a golf club had to be, an average,
Yeah.
so that they could pre-build these clubs, send them to the pro shops or the golf stores, and they were sold off the rack to the golfers. And the golfers never questioned whether or not they should maybe have a different length or a different shaft or a different weighting, even a different grip size, with this. It was just how golf clubs were sold.
Yeah.
And yet I've always gotten into this thing where it hit me a number of years ago. I said, hey, golf is there's other sports that we play where we use some kind of a stick or an implement to hit a ball. And many of us, have played baseball, softball, some play tennis. And if you look at how the baseball, let's use baseball for example, because more people have played that. You look at how you bought baseball bats when you were a kid, or if you got more serious and you played on your high school team, or if you went beyond that. You went into a sporting goods store, and there were all the different brands of bats that were, displayed on the rack. But they weren't all the same length or the same weight or the same handle diameter, because the bat companies learned a long time ago that different baseball players needed different bat specifications to be able to hit the ball to the best of their ability. And so, I still remember when I played serious baseball as a kid, I used a Nellie Fox bat from Hillerich and Brasby that was 32 inches in length, 32 ounces in weight, and it had a fat handle, because if I used anything else, I couldn't hit the ball as well.
Yeah.
So you look at this and you say, hey, that was a form of custom fitting. Each baseball player figured out for himself by using different bats which one worked the best. And if you were a serious baseball player, you walked into a sporting goods store to buy a bat, you always saw the bats offered in different combinations of what were the bat fitting specs of length, weight, handle diameter.
Yeah.
Same with tennis. You go into a good sporting goods store and you see the premium tennis rackets. They never have strings in them. Why? Because of custom fitting. Not all tennis players are going to play with the same kind of string or at the same string tension. And then you have the rackets, stocked in the stores in different grip diameters, as well. So in those sports where you use a stick to hit a ball, baseball, softball, and tennis, it always evolved where the business model for selling the bats and the rackets was custom fit.
Huh.
And it worked.
Yeah.
But it never did in golf. And here's the reason why. Because in baseball and tennis, you only need one stick. And if you're right-handed or left-handed, you can use the same stick, but not in golf, because we've got 14 different clubs, and we have to have a different, set made up for right hand and left hand. So from a pure inventory control standpoint, golf clubs always evolved to be standard made, bought standard off the rack, because it was the only way that the club companies could manufacture the clubs or the retailers to be able to stock the clubs to sell to the golfers. I mean, can you imagine if you're a golf club company and you got to make all the different kinds of lengths and lofts and lies and face angles and shaft weights and all this stuff, and then you go to your retailers at the golf stores and the pro shops and you say, hey, stock our stuff, but here's all the different options you have to stock. Well, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Because it just would put you out of business from an inventory standpoint. So the golf club business always evolved its business model to be standard off the rack. And yet when you looked at all the people who played golf, just go to a driving range on a really busy weekend day and look up and down the tee and see, are all those people the same height, the same weight, the same athletic ability, the same strength? And now look at their swings. Do they all have the same swing characteristics? No. They're all different. The term has evolved over the years. Golfers are as different as fingerprints. No two are alike. And that's almost true when you add up all the elements of size, strength, athletic ability, and swing characteristics. And yet here were all these golfers who were as different as could be, and they're all supposed to walk into a store and they're all buying clubs that are made to the same length, same lofts, same lies, same face angle, same everything, and all they ever got a choice of was different flexes in the shaft. That was all, for this. And then they go out, and they buy the new clubs, and they don't hit them any better than they did before. They, and then they complain and all this, and they're told, oh, go take a bunch of lessons, you'll learn how to hit them. And that's exactly how people have thought about it. And yet, during all of my work of doing serious fitting research, I was able to find out that, hey, if we change this, and this in the specifications of a golf club, this guy hits it better. And if I, so there it was. It was staring me right in the face that custom fitting, when done correctly by someone who knows what they're doing, is better than buying clubs that are bought standard off the rack. So that's been my whole deal, in a nutshell now, through my, writings and website and all this kind of stuff, just to try to get this message out to all these golfers to say, hey, there is a better way for you to get golf clubs that will allow you to play a little bit better, with this. And that's a tough one, because at this point, the giant companies in the golf equipment business are in a position where they are so large with the money they make that they regularly can spend $30, $40, $50 million a year in their marketing to keep convincing these golfers to go into the golf stores or pro shop and buy it off the rack.
Yeah.
And that, as I've learned, over all these years, hate to say it, but that's the worst way to buy a golf club. If your goal is to buy golf clubs that are going to help you to play to the very best of your ability.
Yeah.
You want golf clubs that are going to help you to play the very best of your ability. You need to go to someone who's been trained and studied and experienced in how to analyze the golfer and everything that's different about you, and then match you up with the right specifications to build the golf clubs so that they fit you better.
Wow, that was Tom. I what a great story. I really, I get a lot of fun out of these things because I hear people with their passions and talk about things. So, recently you did an article on what Golf WRX, I think, and it was 16 myths about golf clubs and club performance. And you had mentioned that this was you were surprised at the traction that this has gotten. So, can you talk about a few of those? Myths that you talked about in that article, some of the ones that really kind of resonate with you right now in terms of helping golfers understand how they can be better?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones, and this soon came out in a lot of my research that I was doing in fitting over the years. The vast majority of golfers are average players, okay? It's said that for years and years now, the average handicap of a male golfer is 17. So, without question, there is a far greater number of people who shoot somewhere between the mid-80s and the high 90s than there are who break 80 and, have single-digit handicaps. Well, one of the myths that has evolved over the years is when you talk to these average golfers, and they know that they're not as good as other people on their club that they play with or see and all this, and so you start talking to an average golfer about the benefits of being custom fit, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, I'm not good enough to be custom fit. When I get better, then I'll think about being custom fit. Well, okay, that all evolved simply because people began to know that PGA Tour players, professionals, would be nth degree custom fit. Okay, that all made sense because they're really, really, really good, so they should be able to tell all the differences between different golf clubs.
Yeah.
And they specifically would need to have very precise fitting specifications to play their best. Okay, that's true. But for average golfers, it really is a fact, that when it comes to what we call professional club fitting, the average golfer, the guy who shoots between mid-80s and high 90s, is going to benefit more visibly and more quickly from proper custom fitting than will the low handicap golfer. And here's the reason why. The low handicap golfer is good because he is athletically better, which allowed him to learn the proper swing characteristics of a good golf swing. Okay?
Yeah.
That type of player who has all the right swing characteristics and he's really good athletically as a golfer, he can adjust his swing to clubs that don't fit him quite as well. Now, he may not want to, but let me give you a good example of that in a story. A number of years ago at the PGA Tours stop in New Orleans, the New Orleans Tour stop, there was a pro from Germany by the name of Alex Cheka who was playing in the tournament. And he goes out and he plays in the first two rounds, and after he finishes his second round, he looked at the scoreboard and he thought, I'm going to miss the cut. I think I'm going to head to the next spot and I'll do a little practicing. And so he grabs his clubs, heads to the airport, checks his clubs, and he's about to board the plane when he gets a call on his cell phone, from one of his buddies saying, hey, Alex, your score is going to make the cut. You better get back here, and be playing tomorrow. Okay, so he goes and he tries to get the clubs. They're already on the plane, and under TSA regulations and all this stuff, he can't get them right away. for this. And so he heads back, and they don't get his clubs back to him by some snafu on the next day. So on the Saturday third round, he walks into the pro shop at the New Orleans tour stop and gets a set of rental clubs. Okay. No question by any golfer's standard, they say, whoa, those don't fit Alex. He has very custom fit clubs. Yeah, he does. But he goes out in the third round, he shoots 71. Actually a better score than he shot in the first two rounds. How did he do that? He did it because he's good. He learned after hitting balls and warming up on Saturday the differences between this set and his other set, and he just adjusted his swing to take care of it, and he could do it because he's a great golf athlete like all these guys on the tour are.
Yeah.
Regular golfers couldn't do that, And so what it is that the average golfer makes swing mistakes because he's not as athletically inclined, okay? He swings over the top. He has maybe a little bit of an early release. He may have a little bit more of a downward angle of attack with the driver or the woods. Those are basic swing mistakes, okay? But the thing is, he makes those mistakes consistently. Yes, there's going to be variations, and one time he swings over the top more than the next, but he's not going to have one swing where he swings outside in and the next one he swings inside out. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And if he has an earlier release, he's not going to all of a sudden have a next swing where he has a late release, where he holds the wrist cock angle late in the downswing. In other words, the average players, they make swing mistakes, and they make the same swing mistake pretty much every time. And so with that in mind, it is possible then for the good club fitter to see this and then pick those specifications for what lengths and what lofts and what face angles, what shafts and et cetera, so on, that match better to those swing mistakes that average player makes. And what does it do? It doesn't cure the poor swing characteristics. By no means does it cure them. It reduces the severity of the mistakes in the swing. And so, for example, the golfer who has the 30 or 35-yard slice with the right length and the right face angle and the right weighting on the club, now that slice comes down to being a 10 to 15, maybe at the worst a 20-yard slice, but it's not a 30 or 35-yard slice. And so now instead of being in the lake, the trees, or somebody's backyard, he's in the rough, but he's got a shot at the green. And so from that, he has a little bit more of a chance to get the ball closer to the green than he did before, or on the green, which then in turn turns into fewer double bogeys, more bogeys, an occasional par. And thus it happens from custom fitting for the average player that you can take somebody, let's say, who's a 26 and with really proper fitting, turn them into a 19. Or you can take somebody who's a 19 and turn them into a 14 or 15. We're not going to put anybody on the first tee of the U.S. Open through custom fitting who doesn't have that swing ability to do that in the first place.
Yeah.
But we darn well, through proper custom fitting, to make the clubs so that the mistakes that you make are less severe, less frequent, and with not as wide of a range in how bad those swing mistakes are. And that's how custom fitting works. And thus, custom fitting works better for the middle to higher handicapper than it does for the low handicapper out there. That's the biggest myth that's out there.
Wow.
You asked about there are another specific myth, that comes up specifically related to equipment. Ever since the middle 1980s, drivers have gotten longer and longer in length. You go back into the industry from the early 1900s until the mid-1980s, every single golf equipment company made their standard length for a men's driver to be 43 inches in length. Nobody deviated. But then all of a sudden in the mid-80s, companies began to make drivers longer, and as everybody made them that, a little bit longer length, then they went a little longer, and it was all done as an advantage of one company over another to try and sell more golf clubs. Okay, why did they make drivers longer? Because there was a belief in the industry that if you swing a longer length club, you will have a higher club head speed, and from that you'll be able to hit the ball farther. And in this industry of golf clubs, distance sells more golf clubs, or the promise of distance sells more golf clubs than any other single marketed feature for a golf club. So this was one of the other myths. Longer length drivers hit the ball farther. Okay, well, that's only true if you have a certain type of swing. And that means it's a swing that would be more of an inside-out to square swing path with a very late unhinging of the wrist cock angle and a very controlled repeating swing tempo. If you have that kind of a swing, then a longer length driver will hit the ball farther. But if you're like so many golfers where you swing a little over the top, a little outside in, you release it a little early, you don't have a smooth repeating swing tempo, you're kind of forceful, at times. For these people, as the driver length gets longer, you start to hit the ball more off center, which then costs you distance, or the longer length starts to break your swing down sooner and cause even worse mistakes from the standpoint of being more over the top, more outside in, an even earlier release, all of which then causes poor shot making, and you don't end up with hitting the ball farther. So, here again, this is one of these things where, I learned this a long time ago, and anybody, who's played this game a long time learns this. We don't hit all the shots perfect. Not even Hogan, not Tiger, not anybody out there. We're all going to make swing mistakes because the game's difficult. Okay, so golf is a game of percentages. We want to make sure, if nothing else, that when we miss the shot, we miss it as well as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So our misses don't cost us with double bogeys or triple bogeys. And that exactly is what good custom fitting is all about, is so that when we miss the ball, we miss it better than we did before. And with that, we get a little bit higher percentage of good hits, with this. So you add it all up, and it's tangible, measurable improvement when someone is custom fit by someone who really knows what they're doing in terms of analyzing the golfer and matching them up with the right fitting specifications in their golf clubs.
Well, Tom, one more thing. Any other specific things that you wanted to say to golfers today that you haven't? I think you said quite a lot, to them, to those that are listening.
Yeah, well, and all this stuff that's that. I keep hammering on this, and I know I can sound like a broken record, but there are, it's really, really important if you want to play the best of your ability to be custom fit by someone who knows what they're doing. Okay, how do you find that? Okay, today in the industry, there are quite a number of places that sell golf clubs that tell you that they can custom fit you. And that puts everybody puts golfers into a really difficult situation. I look at it kind of like if I'm going out to buy, some kind of piece of electronic equipment. I don't know anything, about, computers and TVs, stereos, like some people do. So if I walk into a store and I'm going to buy, a new computer or whatever like that, I am completely at the mercy of the person that's waiting on me, and I pray that they are not only knowledgeable, but they are honest as the day is long, so that they have my best interests at heart when I pull my credit card out to pay for whatever they're going to sell me, because I don't know. And that's the way most golfers are when they walk in to buy golf clubs. They don't know what it is about length or loft or face angle or any of these specifications that could help them play a little bit better. They're not trained in it. So they're completely at the mercy of the person that they go in to buy their golf clubs from. And sadly and unfortunately, the big box retail stores or the pro shops are not trained in professional club fitting. They're not going to be able to advise you what all of your best specs are, because they got a whole store full of clubs sitting on the rack that they need to sell first.
Yeah.
For this. So, finding a good club fitter is something that's key in this. And so, there's a couple of different resources, that are out there. My company, that's one of the big things we do is to try and find out who are the custom club makers who are good at club fitting, that have the knowledge, that have the experience to be able to do a good job for a golfer when he walks in to meet with them, for a fitting analysis. So on my company's website, wishongolf.com, right in the center of the homepage, we have a section that's called Find a Club Fitter Locator. You click on that, you put in your town, city, zip code, and a screened club maker will come up. Okay, we don't have screened and certified club fitters in every area of the country. We have many areas covered like that.
Yeah.
We're one resource, through wishongolf.com and our Find a Club Fitter locator to find a good club fitter. In addition, there are 2 professional organizations of custom club makers that are out there. One is called the AGCP, which is the Association of Golf Club Fitting Professionals. The other one is the ICG, which is the International Club Makers Guild. Both have websites. So if you go search for the Association of Golf Club Fitting Professionals, AGCP, or the International Club Makers Guild, find their websites. They both have club maker locators where you can click and find, who is in your area. Now, both of these organizations, who they have, the club makers they have listed, are going to be far, far better than the average person who's selling golf clubs at a retail golf store or a golf course pro shop. So, if you're interested in being custom fit, spend some time doing a little due diligence to get out there and find someone like Tony here, who's been taking this seriously, studying it, like he's going to graduate school, and then going out and doing his own work to gain his experience by fitting golfers and learning from everyone that he fits. These are what we call the professional club fitters. And that's where you're, as a golfer, you're going to be in the best hands when you're working with somebody like this.
Yeah. Well, Tom, this was a great interview, and I hope if you ever have something else that you would like to talk about, that you just get back in touch with me, and we'll do another one. I'll mention. Go ahead.
No. I mean, this is something. I mean, I've been one of the very, very, very lucky people in the world.
Yeah.
That, I found something that not only did I have a real passion for, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Blink my eyes, I'm 63. I hope I can keep doing this for still a very long time.
Yeah.
Going on. Because it has been fascinating, and from it I've learned just so much about the performance of golf clubs, and I want nothing more than all those people who love this game to be able to end up with the right equipment that's going to help them get the most out of what they bring to the first tee and enjoy it as much as they can.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Tom. It's been a real pleasure, and I appreciate you taking the time to, more than talking with me, to hopefully talk with golfers and club fitters, and that they will get a chance to listen to this interview. It was superb. I appreciate it.
Tony, thank you.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Bye now.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
I'm sure as you listen to Tom, you can tell how much he loves to educate golfers on how custom club fitting can help them play their best golf. Go to the Wishon Golf Technology website at www.wishongolf.com to learn more. And that's it for today. In 2 weeks, you'll learn about how to significantly improve your ability to read greens using the Aimpoint Express green reading approach. We'll talk with John Hobbins, an Aimpoint Express certified instructor. See you then.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com